this is because I own the joint that I get to do this. I get to introduce new shows. Victor, you're still here. Do you remember when I introduced yours and threw up? No, I didn't.
I remember a couple of things, some name calling,
and the signals that were given back and forth and all that guys. And by the way, you're catching me in a very bad mood today.
That never happens.
No, my team blew it, and not too happy with Texas Tech at the moment. They could have won it, and they blew it. But anyway, we're starting a brand new show called Locked and Loaded, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And we have a familiar face here. A lot of folks have seen him on the post office walls. We've seen him live and in person, and he's even worked with Victor before.
Yep.
It'd be bad if we'd seen him dead and in person, though, wouldn't it?
I might have been on a milk carton or two as well.
It's possible.
You've been lost before?
Absolutely.
I stay lost. But anyway, we've got Roger Behar in today. Did I say your last name right?
You did, correct.
So I get a brownie point for that, and maybe a browning. Anyway, we're going to be talking weapons. Some people call them guns. Some people call them weapons. But Roger is going to be we're going to be doing some very interesting things. And we haven't even talked about it. So Roger, everybody may be caught off guard, but breaking down some weapons on Facebook. I don't know.
We could certainly do that in future shows. I can plan that for us.
And, we can just do all sorts of things. And I know that everybody in this room, I can't speak for where you are, but in this room is a big advocate of Amendment 2. And
correct.
Yes. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. The only buts I know are Democrats. But anyway, so with that being said.
And that's putting it nicely.
Yes. The Honorable Mr. Behar and your new show.
Thank you for the introduction, Producer Dave. I appreciate that. I'm here today with...
quit calling me that. I hate that.
and that would be my fault, ladies and gentlemen. So how about just Mr. Producer?
No, how about taking out the word producer and just bow when you say David?
It'll be Master Dave. Master Dave.
That's it. I want my plantation.
I want to know where my white privilege went.
Well, you're not all white.
Oh, boy, this is just starting off with a bang.
And we got Victor as he's co-hosting, helping me today because I'm not terribly skilled in any of this stuff. But we're going to see if we can rile some feathers. We're going to rile some feathers. We're going to turn up the heat on a few things and see what happens. First of all, in case you were sleeping under a rock last week, there was a judge in a U.S. District Court for Southern California overturned California's 10-round magazine ban. Now, I don't know if you know what that means, but they've been under a 10-round limit on their magazines since 1994.
Okay, I got to stop you for a second. Folks, if you hadn't gone to Facebook and check out Roger, you got to look at the picture he put up for this show. I'm sorry. I got to bring this up. I'm going to share it out while you continue with your story.
Go right ahead.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm your Huckleberry.
I'm your Huckleberry.
So for the first time in 25 years, Californians were no longer restricted to buying 10-round magazines. Now, I don't know. The rest of the country from 1994 until the law sunset in 2004 were under that restriction. But in 2004, the rest of the country, with the exception of a few states, let's see if we can guess who those are. New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, all had to be released from the 10-round limit on magazines. But on Friday, March 29th, Judge Roger T. Benitez decided the 10-round magazine ban was unconstitutional and therefore struck it down. So you can imagine the excitement of everybody in California being able to buy standard capacity magazines for their AR-15s, Glocks, Springfields, and every other semi-automatic weapon there was. I would love to see a number of how many were shipped in starting with that Friday.
I was just about to ask, Roger, how many do you think, how many places sold out in probably 5 seconds?
If you were looking online, you saw many distributors were completely out of PMags and Glock mags anything like that. However, the joyfulness was soon diminished as an appeal was filed and they put a stay in to return the ban.
Well, politicians can kill a good time in record time.
Yes, they can.
Record time.
So they put a time limit on it. I think this happened Wednesday, and they said the following Friday at 4:59 p.m., the magazines were no longer being able to be sold. However, if you had them on back order, they counted. So the rush after the stay was put back in place must have been unbelievable. Of course, now it's going to go before the Ninth Circuit Court, and we all know how the Ninth Circus Court.
Yeah, look at what they just did last week in regards to immigration. That's a whole nother topic.
They are particularly hostile to Second Amendment supporters. So I hate to see where this is really going to go. And if the Ninth Circus pushes back the 10-round magazine ban, then they'll have to go to the Supreme Court, and that's going to be dubious at best if they can get it to go there and see if anybody says anything.
Oh,
but it's just, this is just one of the last attempts that California has had. Currently, they have restrictions on every handgun that's currently being sold as a newer model must have a micro-stamped firing pin to be able to identify each cartridge case with the serial number or an identifying number and the type of gun it is. So basically, if you go to the range and shoot something with your micro-stamped gun, somebody comes in behind you, scoops up your brass, throws it at a crime scene, boom, you're in trouble.
Exactly. Even if you weren't there.
That's right. But the gun manufacturers say the technology is ridiculously expensive and pretty almost impossible to actually make happen. So
when was the last time your wonderful establishment politician worried about whether something was cost feasible?
It's not about the guns. It's about the control.
Exactly.
All the founding fathers did not put the Second Amendment in the Constitution because they were worried about deer attacking.
This is true. This is true. And when you look at the First Amendment, there's a reason the second one comes next, because there would be no first.
That's right. Exactly. Without the second, there is no first. You have to defend your right to free speech. It doesn't just happen naturally.
Oh, no. In no country on the planet is there a document affording people free speech and freedoms in general, other than the United States Constitution.
Right. But liberals continue to chip away at the Second Amendment because they know once they get it out of the way, then it leaves them wide open to attack the other 9.
Yep.
But of course, with this micro-stamping, no new guns, no new semi-automatic handguns have been for sale in California since 2013. So that's been 6 years now, and many new weapons, if it's even a slightly newer model of an older weapon, must have the micro-stamping. So essentially, they're pushing gun control by making an impossible requirement of these people. You can't do this. The technology's not there to have it done. So eventually, every single handgun is going to be on the list, and you'll only be able to buy 20-year-old weapons in California, except, of course, for law enforcement, politicians, and the privileged few.
Well, you know how I always talk about the elitist. The elitism and the career politicians, none of that mess is going to affect them.
Of course not. They put themselves above the law because they consider themselves royalty. And it's weird because they had challenged the micro-stamping rule and it was shot down. So even though it's illegal, they still shot it down, so the law currently still exists. Okay, so that's a little depressing. But California did have 1 week of glorious freedom to be able to buy magazines, and I would love to know the number that were sold in that state.
It'll probably come out at some point.
We'd hope so. And I wonder how many people were digging in the backyard or in the front yard trying to dig up those magazines that were deemed illegal, suddenly recovered from a random boating accident.
Well, they were at the bottom of the sea, and we just happened to recover them.
Hey, they can wash ashore.
That's true. Exactly.
Okay, but California is one side of the spectrum. Let's go to the other side for a minute. In Missouri, this year, a Senator, Eric Burleson, and Jared Taylor have introduced versions of the Second Amendment Protection Act, or SAPA. Now, this is an unusual bill in that it gives people in Missouri the right to basically ignore any federal law they feel infringes on the Second Amendment. So anything that the state deems as, oh, we don't think that abides with the Second Amendment. We're not going to abide that law. So we're going to go against the federal government in this case. And this is just one more step of separating states' rights and federal law, because you have it in marijuana, you have it in illegal immigration. All these people think that just because they're doing it, it's okay. But marijuana is still a federally regulated substance. And illegal immigration, still illegal.
What do you mean illegal? I think you're a racist, Roger.
Oh, maybe, but I'm not picking on a race. I don't care what race is coming into the country illegally.
Even I get accused of being a brown racist somehow when I have family galore in Mexico, but yet I stand for actual border security, and somehow I'm a Mexican racist. Crazy.
You just want to enforce the law that's there. If Democrats don't like it, why didn't they change the law? It's that simple.
It's not like they haven't had opportunities.
I mean, they had 8 years of Obama with a Democrat in charge for at least 2 of those years in the House and the Senate. They could have easily passed whatever they wanted, but instead they went for socialized medicine.
Exactly.
You know, Mick Jagger recently had heart surgery. And he lives in, where's that place across the sea? Jolly old England, that's it.
Across the pond?
That's it.
Tell me where he didn't stay for surgery,
He
Roger.
did not get his surgery in England. He got it in the United States. So what does that tell you about how great the socialized medicine is?
Exactly.
But I digress. So in Missouri now, any law, and this is including suppressors, any kind of restriction on rifles and handguns. I don't know about fully automatic weapons, though, but apparently they're saying any law that infringes on the Second Amendment will not be enforced in Missouri. Now, I don't know if that means they're going to stop federal enforcers from coming in and doing it or not assisting them, which is like what other big cities do when they're trying to stop the illegal immigration. They just don't assist ICE with any of their arrests. So if Missouri does this, you wonder how long is it going to be until the federal, I guess the BATF agents come in and get no assistance from the state law enforcement. And if that will actually stay, or will they just do it on their own, the way the ICE agents are doing now in states that will not assist with border control. Now, this was tried before in Kansas. They had passed a law similar to this. And unfortunately, federal people came in, arrested a gentleman who was making suppressors that were stamped made in Kansas for use in Kansas only, because most of the gun laws of 1934 are there as a interstate commerce act. Okay, we're going to take a break now. You're listening to America's Web Radio, and this is Locked and Loaded with Roger Bihar and Victor Armendariz.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Locked and loaded. Here we go. We're going to get right back into it because we got a lot of stuff to cover today. And we were talking about Missouri a moment ago. And this is interesting. This case, the fact that they're having the Second Amendment Protection Act, validates the doctrine that the federal government has no power to force state agencies or officers to do what the federal government orders them to. Think about that for a minute. The federal government can't force states to do anything. The only thing the federal government can do is take away money for certain things in order to force compliance.
Well, Roger, we go back to there are 18 enumerated powers. And other than those 18 enumerated powers, everything else is supposed to reside with the states. But what the federal government does is hold that little piggy bank over their heads. And they do. They try and use money for compliance.
Well, they've done it before. Remember back in the 70s when they got the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit passed by threatening to withhold federal highway funds?
Yep. That's crazy.
And then they threatened to hold back funds if states did not raise their drinking age to 21. I mean, they've got the power of the purse in some cases.
In some cases they do, but this is where we need people to rise up. But real quick, we've got a comment from a listener. You mentioned the Ninth Circus Court earlier, and the astute listener commented that maybe they can bring higher capacity under Obama.
Oh, well, yes, Obama provided those to all kinds of drug dealers south of the border. However, getting them into American citizens' hands is a whole nother story. Not likely to happen as easily.
Well, once again, your Democrat Progressive Party cares more for the illegal and for the people of Mexico than they do for American citizens.
It's funny you should mention that. I don't know if anyone knows, but there was a bill that was voted on, and the bill basically said, should ICE be notified if an illegal tries to buy a weapon without having proper credentials? And they voted against this. So basically, it's okay if illegals have weapons. They just don't want American citizens to have them.
So what you're saying is illegals can have illegal weapons and there's no problem, but a law-abiding citizen with the Second Amendment behind them shouldn't have a weapon.
Exactly. Well, that's what the Democrats seem to think. There's a reason why Democrats want all illegals to have the right to vote and to bring them into the country. It's because Americans won't vote for them anymore.
Exactly.
So they have to go outside their circle of.
It's all about expanding the voting rolls because they're losing. And look, they're losing Hispanic support and they're losing Black support. So they got to go somewhere.
They got to go somewhere. And Americans just won't vote for them. Now, if you remember, Missouri is fast becoming one of my favorite Second Amendment states. And if you remember, a few weeks ago, we talked about Missouri's AR-15 law, which required every resident or head of household of the state to own an AR-15. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, but Roger, I can't afford an AR-15. But no, wait. There was money set aside to reimburse people when they bought one.
You mean taxpayers' dollars could buy me an AR-15?
Hey, I thought, isn't the Second Amendment a right to bear arms?
Of course it is.
And if you have a right to health care that's supposed to be paid for by the government, and you have a right to bear arms, shouldn't the government pay for your guns as well?
Well, we have an explicit written right in the Second Amendment to bear arms. I don't know where that is in the Constitution for healthcare, Roger. So if they can just poof, healthcare is a right, then we've got lots more ground to stand on than even we thought we did.
That's right. I mean, if it's a right and the government's supposed to pay for rights, then hell, let's go get some guns. I'll just submit my food stamps or my gun stamps.
Yeah, where do I get? What program is that? My gun stamp program.
No doubt. But anyway, and then they also, at the same time, were trying to pass a law to make anybody who wanted to be a member of a militia part of the Missouri militia.
All right, we got to take a second here because we have a serious question from a serious listener, and I'm not kidding. This is a serious question. Listener would like to know, do current AR-15s have to be registered with the ATF?
No, there's no federal registry of any weapons. All registries are state only. Certain states require, I guess you might say, a permission to buy. but the federal government has no federal registry of weapon owners or guns right now. In fact, in New York, if you want to just purchase a handgun, not carry it, just purchase one, you have to pay $300, fill out a 60-page application fee, and probably wait 6 months to a year just to get considered to be able to purchase one.
Wow, perfect.
Now tell me that's the right to keep and bear arms.
Well, that is good to know. And thank you, listener, for that question.
But yeah, so now in Missouri, if you're in the militia, that would silence all the people who come onto the Second Amendment and says, well, it says militia. It doesn't mean people. Well, now everybody in Missouri is allowed to be a member of the Missouri militia. Therefore, they can own whatever kind of guns they want.
It's brilliant, and every red state should follow suit. You know, I've often said, Roger, that Georgia, I mean, we're a good gun state, but we need to be a constitutional gun state. And I would push for that if I ever run for office, but we should be a constitutional gun state, and we should also be everyone should be or could be a militia state.
Yeah, it would be easy to do. In fact, if other states follow suit, that'd be pretty interesting to see how the Democrats would stop that. Could you imagine if California or New York or Illinois had a militia and they claimed to be members of militia? Would that enable them to buy any kind of weapon they wanted?
You know, just because this is the way my mind works. So I can imagine the militia in Georgia, because I know, you know, we would be some badass dudes. Can you imagine the California chapter of the militia, what they must look like?
But you got to realize that the manufacturers of Nerf guns would be overwhelmed with requests to sponsor their militia groups.
Okay, those of you who hear me laughing, I'm laughing because I just had an image in my head of, you know how, Roger, California is referred to as the land of fairies and nuts, or nuts and fairies?
Fruits and nuts.
Fruits and nuts. Man, I'm going to get in trouble. I just know it. But picture that image in the militia. I mean, it could be the pink squad, the pink hat squad, the high squad.
Wow. I wonder how many Nerf guns you can put into a Prius.
Or a smart car.
Oh, a smart car. Yeah, much more limited, but you know.
I can hear it now. Ooh, that's a big gun there you got there.
That's Northern California, of course. Now, I know there are a lot of gunners in California that are just fuming mad at all the laws and regulations they have to put up with. But you got to realize we're not making fun of you guys. But you got to realize where you are in hostile territory.
Yeah, we happily make fun of San Francisco, which is kind of where I was going with that.
Obviously.
That's good.
But it's not all in California. Let me throw this one out there. Okay. People move from California to other places because the taxes are too high, the laws are too restrictive, and they move to places like Washington and Oregon and Colorado. So now Oregon has become, I guess, the latest victim of the locust effect, which is what I call people who they move from a place where the taxes are too high, and then they go somewhere else, vote the same way, do the same stupid things, and end up with the same mess that they left. So now the Oregon legislature has proposed a new gun law. It makes no sense, and it's probably unconstitutional, but we're going to throw it out there anyway. The law basically says if someone steals a gun from you for 2 years, you're responsible for anything that gun does. As if the gun's going to go out on its own and do something. You're responsible for it for 2 years.
That makes zero sense.
Imagine that with knives, or someone steals your car, runs people over, you get thrown in jail because they stole your car.
Hey, somebody could steal your bat and go bash somebody's head over with it, but somehow you're responsible.
Oh, yeah. Imagine, though, if a criminal breaks into your house, trips over something, are you responsible for him hurting himself?
In some of these liberal states, yes. It's amazing, and sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty empty bill from what I understand, but they tacked a lot of other stuff into it also. And I can't imagine that manufacturers of any product in Oregon are going to allow this to go through. Do you imagine being responsible if somebody steals something from you, commits a violent act with it, and they hold you responsible? Most of these people aren't even responsible for what their children do.
It's just unbelievable. It's not so much that there may not be a lot of teeth to go with this bill. It's the fact that they'll attempt it. because when they attempt it once, they're going to do it again and again and again and again and again until they get it happen. I mean, look, that's how we got Obamacare.
Right. Yeah, because people won't have that right to health care. But there's also other things in the bill, such as safe storage practices, and they have discrimination on age, probably pushing it to 21 on everything. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know if it's just proposed right now. It has not gone through, so we don't know.
Well, get this. They want to push the age, and they'll happily push the age up, except the voting age. So you can have 16-year-olds voting on your gun rights.
Right. And a 16-year-old is going to be, 5 years away from even being able to buy a gun with the new gun laws, and yet he's going to be able to vote on such things. It's idiocracy at its finest.
At best.
And if you haven't seen that movie, by all means, it was supposed to be a comedy. But unfortunately, if you watch it today, it looks like a horror film.
It's sad, but true. It's like I say of 1984. The only problem with that book is he got the year wrong.
I know. He was off by about 20 years, 30 years. But anyway, it's amazing to think the ways they will go about restricting the Second Amendment to try and keep good people from having firearms and blaming them for the actions of a bad person. But yet one illegal alien kills somebody. We can't blame all the illegals for that. That was just one person. But when it comes to guns, we're going to blame everybody, even though it was just one person. It's so difficult to distinguish the difference with these idiots.
The mind of a liberal or a progressive.
Well, we can check out some other progressives. Let's see, like Mao Zedong. How many people did he kill? 20 million, I think.
Give or take.
And then Joseph Stalin. He was a hip democratic socialist before he took power.
He was actually, Stalin was actually looked at by some Democrats in this country at the time as, let's look at what this guy's doing. It's
Democrat socialism. That sounds like a good idea. It's so progressive.
Very progressive.
Now, this is something, I hate to bring this guy's name up, but when Hitler was taking over Germany in the late 30s, the Democrats were the only ones who thought, hey, this might be a good idea. Maybe we should see what this guy's doing. Because politically, he was a democratic socialist. Now, granted, he had some other crazy, lunatic, fringe elements in him that wanted him to just kill people at random for no reason. But despite that, he was still politically, he fell on the socialist side of things.
So I got another question here from a listener, and I like to get to the listeners' questions because that's why we're here. So question coming in now is, when you buy a weapon, and when you buy a weapon in Georgia, there's a background check, as not just Georgia,
actually,
but
everywhere in the United States is required to have a federal background check.
Exactly. So the question is, when the background check is done, can the government then can they track your purchase?
Supposedly not. According to the law, they're not supposed to keep those files. They're not supposed to keep those files more than like 72 hours or a month, something like that. I'd have to look it up to be exactly sure.
They're also not supposed to wiretap a candidate for the president of the United States. But hey, who's watching?
I mean, I'm sure the NSA knows everything anyway, so it really doesn't matter. And now that people have Alexas and Google Homes, I mean, you're just inviting the NSA to listen to everything. They probably have backups of all your stuff that you don't have.
That right there, Roger, is a good point for all of you out there. And hey, look, I know it's awesome. It's great technology. I have family members that use it, but every time you go on Facebook or Google, especially Google is basically a right arm for the Democrat Party. So you're opening yourselves up and you're putting your life out there. And if you think the NSA and other government agencies aren't recording this information, you're kidding yourself. So I think so think about it.
Okay, well, we have to head into another break now. You are listening to America's Web Radio. I am Roger Behar with Locked and Loaded with my co-host Victor Armendariz, who, in case you missed it this week, does On Point with Victor from 2 to 3 every Tuesday. We'll be right back.
Quick Stakes, that's QUIK Stakes, are not just for surveyors. They are great for family and community gardens. Go online to www.quickstake.com or contact your local land surveying supply dealer and get you a box of Quick Stakes. You'll love them every year when you plant your garden. Again, that's Quick Stakes, QUIK Stakes, the truly preferred way to stake and identify what's in your garden now.
Hi, this is Steve Ronaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio. Just talking to you about antique car insurance. I think that if you're looking for the best coverage for your classic car, consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. I've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the internet. Hi, this is Steve Ronaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio. Just talking to you about antique car insurance. I think that if you're looking for the best coverage for your classic car, consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. I've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the internet.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we had a question come in during the break about, can we help gun owners to avoid domestic violence or be educated in domestic violence issues? And I would be willing to say that any legal gun owner, any mentally sane gun owner, is probably not going to have a problem knowing right from wrong, and a gun would not make a difference. I mean, you hear of people getting beat to death every single day. In fact, hammers kill more people in this country than guns do. But does that mean we need to lock up all the hammers at Home Depot? Granted, a gun might make it a little easier, but it's not going to stop it. And as far as education goes, the NRA is one of the biggest educators of people with gun laws and biggest proponents against gun violence, at least illegal gun violence.
You know what, Roger, just real quick, in response to that question, because I always encourage on my show to get challenged, and I love it when listeners call in, and it's a good concern that listener has. But one thing that she needs to look, and she can look this up, there are laws on the books that would have stopped a lot of these domestic shootings that happen. And when you're talking about someone who goes after a girlfriend, there probably was an order out, and I'm going to forget the order. Boy, Mark the Shark would kill me. A restraining order.
Protection
probably order. Out on that guy. There was probably he probably broke numerous laws to possess the gun he had that he used. So the point that Roger, I think that you make and that I make on my show is not one of these cases are you having a card-carrying, permitted gun owner committing these crimes. These are usually, for lack of a better term, they're criminals, or they're criminals that are going to be criminals. But or like you, Roger, you mentioned mental health issue. But there are laws on the books that aren't enforced in many cases that could stop a lot of the gun violence. So the answer to gun violence isn't let's go take away the rights of law-abiding everyday citizens. The answer is let's go attack the problem and solve the problem at its source.
It's like stopping drunk drivers. You don't stop drunk drivers by restricting sober drivers or by educating sober drivers of people who never got caught for that. There's going to be crime. I understand that, and you can't stop it all. You're always going to have people who will do evil. And the only way to allow evil to thrive is for good people to do nothing. So yes, I would certainly support education against gun violence. And in fact, most people would probably not hesitate. And most gun owners would not hesitate at all because it gives all of us a bad name. No one wants to be lumped in with those idiots. In fact, if you look at FBI crime statistics, over 90% of all weapons used in a crime were illegally obtained or stolen from somebody, which is illegally obtained as well. But I think we've covered the law enough. I think most Second Amendment supporters understand that it is a right that comes with great responsibility, in the words of Spider-Man. But we're going to get in a little something different now because everybody wants to know about what's new, what's great, what's coming out, what's been out. And I'm going to throw down on the MP5. Anybody who's ever played a video game, anybody who has ever watched a movie knows that the HK MP5 is probably the standard submachine gun by which all others are judged. It was one of the first ones to come out with a fully integrally suppressed barrel. And the most amazing thing about this barrel is any of you guys who run suppressors know you need to run subsonic ammo in your weapon if you're going to have suppressed fire. However, if you have an MP5 SD, Now, SD stands for something in German, which basically means suppressed.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch? No.
Yeah, it's something like that. Something German that I don't know. But it works by, they have small ports in the barrel just ahead of the receiver, which bleed off gas. So by the time the bullet gets to the suppressor, it is already going at subsonic speeds, which means you can take an MP5 SD, load it with standard NATO ammo, and it will fire suppressed. That's because the military doesn't want to have two kinds of ammo, one suppressed, one unsuppressed. They want to be able to shoot any 9mm in this thing and make it work. And like I said, the MP5 has been the standard by which all others have been judged, and it has been the standard for over 50 years, actually 53 years.
Let me pause you right there. Just for the listeners out there, define subsonic ammo.
Oh, right. Anything that goes above the speed of sound will cause a sonic boom or a sonic crack. Like if a jet goes too fast, goes over the speed of sound, it will cause a sonic boom.
There's no such thing as too fast. Okay, go ahead.
If it goes beyond the speed of sound, you're right. There's no such thing as too fast, says the guy who owns the Viper.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, subsonic ammo means below the speed of sound. So it's usually loaded a little lighter in order to get the suppression to work. Because if the bullet comes out of the barrel above the speed of sound, it will still break the sound barrier, even though it's going through a suppressor or silencer. So someone decided, you know what, the MP5 has been around for 50 years. Let's see if we can do something better, because it is a very old design. Now, there are other people coming to market with comparable weapons, like the SIG MPX is out now, the CZ Scorpion are both good pistol caliber carbines that have a very good range of accessories and are put into many configurations, especially now that the market has the pistol brace. For those of you who don't know what that is, you need to look that up, but it is a great way to get a short-barreled pistol to look similar to a rifle and function similarly. But now there's a newcomer to the market that has an integral suppressor capable of suppressing even supersonic ammo, which means ammo that goes faster than the speed of sound. And it uses the ported barrel just ahead of the receiver, just like the MP5 does. It's the Delta S 9mm. It's based on an AR design, but it's not some pieced together parts bin gun that was thrown together with, you know, any old AR-15 parts. It was designed specifically from the ground up. In fact, it has a side charging handle on some of the variations, which make it more comparable to those who are used to using an MP5. The rest of the controls are all standard AR-15 type controls, so the familiarity will be there. But of course, with any AR design, you're limited by the buffer tube. For those of you who understand that there's a spring in the back of an AR-15 that sticks out anywhere from 4 to 10 inches that provide the recoil, that provide the blowback to put the bolt carrier group back into battery. On the MP5, it has a delayed roller block, which means it's smaller and runs on springs that are internal into the receiver instead of outside the receiver as the AR. But the Delta S is still a huge step forward in suppression because they can fire any type of 9mm ammo and it will be suppressed. Now, the cost on this thing is right at $2,400, just under that for the basic version. And they even make a law enforcement version, which has the standard charging handle. So again, familiarity with the design is great. But it seems like to me that possibly someone would eventually come out with a design in a suppressor that will help suppress even supersonic ammo, because that is going to be the next step forward in this kind of thing.
When are we coming out with a suppressor that suppresses progressive Democrats? Just saying.
Well, that's something that's very hard to muzzle because the velocity is so high of the air coming out of their mouths. It's very difficult to stop that.
Hey. No one brought up Alexandria Cortez today.
Oh, come on. She's so much fun.
Unfortunately. She is fun, and
although she's getting beat on by her own Democrats now. They're eating their own right now. She is not popular.
Oh no. You know what? I'm going to make a prediction right here on Locked and Load. I say the Democrats primary her in 2020, and she's probably
going to wait that long.
Yeah, well, they have no choice right now, but yes.
Although you got to admit, she has gotten more press than any other new congressperson probably in the last 20 years.
That's one of the things they're jealous about. They're
Yeah.
jealous.
They want to get that kind of coverage.
Oh yeah, they want that kind of attention, and the Twitter following she has, sad, but it's there. It's there.
Well, those are the kind of people who don't study civics in school. When she was asked about studying civics in school and if it should be brought back, I think she said something about people should study all kinds of cars and not just civics.
Not just civics. You know, it wouldn't surprise me one bit, but I don't even think civics is offered, even in the Honda variety. But you know, Roger, why don't you tell people the definition of AR, because you've mentioned AR-15 a couple of times today, or a few times
You're
today,
correct.
and let's set that record straight right now.
There was a gentleman named Eugene Stoner. He started a company called Armalite, and the AR stands for Armalite Rifle.
You mean it doesn't stand for big, bad, terrible, ugly, mean rifle?
Assault rifle? No, there's no such thing as an assault rifle except in the military. And you can't own an assault rifle with a $200 tax stamp, an extensive federal background check.
And we mean extensive.
Right. I mean, you have to, and it has to be manufactured prior to 1986. Because of the Hughes Act, they limited all fully automatic weapons to manufacture prior to 1986. So essentially cutting down on the number of them that would become available. The only way to eliminate that would be to eliminate the Gun Control Act of 1934, which people are pushing for, but other people are pushing back. So not likely to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, so what you're saying, Roger, with all these people running around led by today's Democrat Party, that no one should have the same weapons as the military. You want to touch that subject real quick?
You got to realize in 1776, all rifles were military rifles. There was no difference between them.
Exactly.
And for those of you who say they couldn't have imagined what it could have been like now, let's take your First Amendment rights and throw them under the same scrutiny. Do you think the First Amendment could have, when they wrote the First Amendment, do you think they possibly could have imagined the internet, high-speed printing presses, radio, television,
social media?
Exactly. Any other types of communication. In fact, the First Amendment specifically spells out freedom of the press, referring to a printing press.
Exactly.
So anything else doesn't fall under the protection. So just like you're saying militia means somebody in the military, which it doesn't, by the way, militiamen were citizens who stood up for their rights and fought for this country.
Well, that would require people to understand the definition of militiamen, and I venture to say that's not being taught. Even the correct language, as you just mentioned in the First Amendment, freedom of the press, this stuff just isn't taught, or it's changed, and they, like I talked about earlier, revisionist history.
Yeah, well, the press specifically means printing press, which means the First Amendment doesn't protect the internet or television or radio or any other kind of media.
Well, it could be interpreted that way if they use the same standards that they're interpreting the Second Amendment with, or people with common sense or people who study the Founding Fathers would understand there's a reason why the word printing isn't before the press in the First Amendment, because they had the foresight to know that press was going to expand with future, just as the Second Amendment is very clear and short. There's a reason why the Second Amendment is probably the shortest and most concise amendment in the Constitution.
Because they knew what it took to free a country.
Yes, they did.
But if you look at the statistics, though, that will just make some people just fall out. That the number of people that fought in the Revolutionary War, the percentage of people that actually picked up a weapon and fought was 3%. Now, not to say the hearts and minds of the other 97% weren't involved, but only 3% of the people fought to start our country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a historical fact, and it's an amazing fact, because it shows what the minority can do when they band together, what the people can do when they band together. It's nothing short of amazement, and that's America.
Okay, we'll be right back. We have to take a quick break. You're listening to America's Web Radio.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to America's Web Radio. We are locked and loaded. I'm Roger Behar here with Victor Armendariz, who, in case you weren't here earlier.
And I'm chambered up. No. Hey, we have another question. We have a listener that would like to know, Roger, what gun do you recommend for home defense?
One that's loaded, close by wherever you're sitting or laying or sleeping.
So you're not talking about a Palestinian weapon?
Oh, the rocks. No, don't recommend those for protection. Although they are non-corrosive, so that's good.
Well, they have that going for them.
Yes, don't bring a rock to a gunfight. Not a good idea. But yeah, it just depends on your situation, how big your house is. Do you have a driveway that's 500 feet long that you need to shoot some people at the bottom of it? Then your handgun's not going to be quite as good for that. Or if you have kids in the house, you got to be very careful where you're shooting. You need different ammo, and you have to secure all the people in your house or animals to make sure they're safe before you start blazing away at any potential bad guys.
So look, Locked and Loaded for this first show has been killer. We've got another comment here that I want to get this out there because this is a great comment, Roger. One of the listeners pointed out that there was actually early automatic weapons. And one to look up is called the Puckle gun. That was around when the founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment. So they actually could have imagined the idea of an automatic weapon.
Now, granted, a lot of them were prototype type weapons or very advanced for their time, but the indication was there. Weapons were heading in this direction. In fact, I forget the gentleman's name who invented the first machine gun, the Gatling gun. He invented it.
Sir Gatlin. No, I made that up.
That it would be so horrendous a weapon that nobody would ever want to use it, and it would end all war. But human nature doesn't quite work that way. Everybody wants an advantage.
Exactly. And that Gatling gun, there's a reason that the phrase that tamed the West is out there.
Because of the Gatling gun and Colonel Colt's revolver.
And Winchester. And that, yeah.
Now, you were talking about home defense. There's one thing I wanted to kind of go over, and a lot of people don't know. Most of you guys who are aficionados are going to be pretty versed in this, but we're going to talk about the conditions of readiness of a weapon. So here we go. Now we're going to start with, now some of these have been modified. These were originally designed to cover the conditions of a 1911 by a guy named Colonel Jeff Cooper. But these have been modified because now they're striker-fired weapons and weapons that don't follow quite the same single-action automatic design. First, there's Condition 5. No magazine in the frame, no round in the chamber, and the slide is locked back to expose the chamber for a visual inspection. A lot of times if you're at a range, they'll say, everybody cease fire, show clear. And you want to leave your weapon on the table or on the rack in front of you with the chamber open so they can walk by, do a visual inspection. And there's Condition 4 is next. No magazine in the gun, no round in the chamber, slide forward and hammer down. Now, in the case of a striker-fired pistol or even a single-action pistol, you want to lower the hammer or release the striker before it's completely Condition 4.
And for the truckers out there, we're talking about guns, not hammering down the gas pedal.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's for on your way home. But yeah, they'll say condition 4, and they'll usually want you to show clear, put the slide forward, point the weapon in a safe direction, and then pull the trigger. Now the gun is in condition 4. And then you got condition 3, magazine in, slide forward, chamber empty. Now this is something that some militaries actually require in training, where they have to draw the weapon, rack the slide back to fire the first round. And there's not one kept in the chamber, even though it's in the holster in an active situation. So that's something that requires a lot of additional training, but it can be done. So be aware of that. In fact, some people don't feel comfortable carrying one in the chamber, so they'll carry one in the magazine and just know if they have to draw the weapon, it has to be racked first before it can be fired. And it's not a bad idea, especially until you get more comfortable or know your holster better and you know you're going to feel comfortable with it. Then don't do anything you're not comfortable with.
And it also makes a difference with the style of gun you're carrying. You know, for instance, one of the guns that I like to carry is a Glock, and there is no safety on the Glock. So
There's lots of safeties on the Glock.
Well, there is one big safety, and that's the owner.
Yeah, your finger is
your
the safety.
fingers. But you know, there are situations if you're carrying a Glock, you may not want to chamber the weapon or carry it at chamber, and that's understandable. But it does have a heavy trigger, so it's not like it's going to go off
relatively safe. And also on a striker fired weapon, most of them do not have safeties. So you want to make sure you carry it in a holster that's going to protect that trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because I heard one story, a gentleman put his weapon, he had a soft sleeve holster, went to put the weapon in his back while sitting in his car. As he put the weapon into his back, there was a pen or a pencil or something, caught the trigger, pushed it down, fired it right through the bottom of the truck. Fortunately, didn't hit any of him. But he said it was so loud, he was deafened for a few minutes, and they scared the ever-loving
Let's just say
squeeze out of him.
His seat may have been a different color when he got out of that truck.
Yeah, so any striker-fired pistol with no safety has to be handled with extra care to make sure it's going to be safe.
And this is part of being a gun owner. It's part of being if you go to the trouble to be approved for a carry permit, there is a responsibility, and this is where I think a lot of people who are anti-gun or they're just afraid of guns do not understand that people, just using myself as an example, or you, Roger, as an example, we have such a heightened bit of security because we are gun carries and we do have a carry permit and we do use guns as a tool for protection.
And when you go and buying the gun is only step one. Getting the training is so much more important than getting any weapon. Get somebody to show you, do some training drills, get a professional to show you, teach you, give you examples of what to do and what not to do. That's the best way to learn anything, whether it's gun handling, whether it's bowling, whether it's flying a kite. Get somebody who knows what they're doing to show you how. It's the easiest way to learn. But with a gun, there's a chance you could actually hurt somebody. While when bowling, much less likely.
And check and see if they're a Democrat.
Well, you know,
that should be a prerequisite.
I saw a sign at a gun range that said, "We don't sell guns to terrorists or Democrats because it's too hard to tell the difference."
I mean, folks, we joke about it, but it's sad. And the only reason we joke about it is because we have a today's Democrat Party. I'm not talking about the Kennedy Democrat Party, or even the Clinton, Bill Clinton's. Yeah. But we have a party today that's full of the Bernie Sanders, the Cortezes, and the Pelosi's, and the Bookers, and Feinsteins, who are anti-gun, and that is why we will make fun a lot of times, is because it's okay to have a conversation with us about how can we be more safe, but don't start your conversation with, you want to take my gun away.
Yeah, well, let's not exclude the Republicans from this either, because let's keep in mind, George Bush was the one who signed the 1994 assault rifle ban.
Don't remind me.
Yeah, or was it? No, I'm sorry. It may have been. That was the 86, and 1994 was Reagan.
Yeah.
No,
84. You got that backwards. 84.
84 was Reagan, 94 was Bush. So, right. It's not all on one party or the other. Any of the politicians who want to remove your guns are going to be a problem. The Hughes Act, the one that limited machine guns manufactured after 1986, was signed by Reagan. So, there's going to be things on both sides that have to be dealt with. And you can't have politicians restricting individual rights. The Bill of Rights is there for a reason, and they're all individual rights that are enumerated.
Well, there's no doubt there, and that's one thing that people who listen to my show, I'll rail against Democrats and Republicans. I am an equal opportunity offender when it comes to absolutely calling out Democrats and Republicans. And you're 100% right there, Roger. Republicans are culpable for some of the restrictive gun rules and laws that we have. And they do it because they're trying to make friends with the Democrats. They're trying to cross the aisle, so to speak, or they're trying to make favor with the media instead of actually going, are we basically going against the Constitution, which they swore to uphold?
But in many cases, it's a knee-jerk reaction to an event. Like after Reagan was shot, that's when they got him to sign the Hughes Act.
Which is the worst time to make policy, is reactionary policy.
Right. Don't base it on emotion. I mean, emotion, everyone wants to feel good about everything, but you want to have laws that make sense and will show that they can stand the test of time.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, you mentioned Reagan being shot. One of the best stories from Ronald Reagan, who is an absolute idol of mine, was after he got shot. And this is the kind of guy Ronald Reagan was. He was in the emergency room going under surgery for a bullet wound, and he looked up and he asked the doctor, are you a Republican? I mean, you can't, that's the kind of humor that he had. It was just great.
We operated on a bullet wound and wanted to know if the doctor was a Republican.
So
that's great.
We have another question that came in here, and this question is, which striker fire gun is the safest if dropped? So,
well, the SIG had a problem with theirs for a while. If you would drop it, they would tend to go off. I believe they have since recalled and fixed that.
Oh,
and
sure
Glocks have been known to be extremely safe. However, I have to think probably the Springfield Armory would be one of the safest ones if dropped, because it does have a grip safety also. So your hand has to be gripping the back part of the gun and able to release the trigger. So that would give you an extra layer of protection on something like that.
Perfect. I mean, that makes total sense, because there are situations, and you mentioned the SIG, but they were very quick to recall that problem.
Well, yeah, nobody wants to drop their SIG and have bullets going everywhere. Now, also, they have safeties available on some of the striker-fired weapons. When the military was asking to replace the Berettas, they wanted a manual safety on all these striker-fired weapons. So SIG has offered a 320 with a safety. Smith & Wesson for the M&P has offered one with a manual safety. Glock, however, has not offered one to the civilian market yet, but there was one on the one that was thrown into the military trials.
That's good to know.
Okay, real quick, let's finish these up. We got no time. We'll finish them next time.
You got about 30 seconds. So.
Thank you for listening to America's Web Radio. This is Locked and Loaded with Roger Behart and my co-host Victor Armendariz.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you've got friends that are out there and they missed today's show, have them go to America's Web Radio, look at the page up, go to Facebook, find America's Web Radio page. You can rewatch this video. Go to YouTube, America's Web Radio on YouTube, and you can watch these shows. Now, give us a few minutes to get them up there, but the shows will be up. So make sure you tune in, tell your friends, and you've been listening to America's Web Radio.
Until next time.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member